Have I forgotten how to film? Hi, hello, welcome back. Welcome back to another week in your cozy corner of the internet where we yap constantly about life and books. So this week I wanted to do a video for all of you out there who are thinking about getting into litfic. If you would like more information on what litfic is, I actually did a video about it. I'll try and figure out how to put the little link here. So essentially litfic is a very, very, very broad genre of fiction. It's almost like I would hazard on the side of saying that it's not even really a genre, it's kind of like a style of writing. And so I would say that within the umbrella of litfic, there are multiple books that pull from different genres. So I thought I would make a bit of a crash course today for those of you who are what would be stereotypically described as genre readers, so someone who loves and reads romance and only romance, or someone that loves and reads fantasy, etc, etc, etc. And I thought I would give you some intro recommendations into what you should be reading when it comes to litfic if you like a particular genre. Now, as always, I am not like the way, the truth, and the life, the Messiah, the great book person. I can't speak. I'm not the be all and end all when it comes to recommendations, okay? So if I say something that you don't like, that's fine. We can agree to disagree. When it comes to politics, I can't agree to disagree. When it comes to books, I can. So if you don't like anything that I recommend, let's just keep it civil in the comments, okay? Let's just keep it civil. So the first genre I want to talk about is one of my personal favorites, and that is the romance genre. Don't get me wrong, I love a good Emily Henry, I love a good Elsie Silver, I love a good brain off kind of like trashy romance. I read those constantly. But if you are wanting to get into something that's a bit more like prose heavy and like, you know, pretentious and litfic, my recommendation for your intro to the romance litfic genre is going to be, it's an obvious one, but it's got to be Normal People by Sally Rooney. There is a reason. Look, I try and recommend things on this channel that I feel like not a lot of people talk about. However, every now and then you stumble across something where you're like, okay, I understand. I understand the hype. I understand why Sally Rooney is considered like one of the go-to litfic authors. So Normal People is about Connell and Marianne, who start up like a sexual relationship in high school. They're both from very different walks of life. So Connell is very like well-spoken and popular and confident, but his family is quite lower on the socioeconomic scale, whereas Marianne is very withdrawn and a bit like of a weirdo, and she gets picked on a lot. She's not popular at school, but her family is incredibly wealthy. But she also has a really unhealthy family dynamic where Connell has a really healthy, happy relationship with his mother. They meet because Connell's mother cleans Marianne's house. So they meet one day at Marianne's house when Connell comes to pick his mum up, and they start, a sexual relationship that eventually turns into something deeper than that. So basically we follow them throughout, I think it's over the course of 4 or 5 years, I believe. And we start meeting them in high school, and we follow them as they graduate and go to uni together and drift in and out of each other's lives. I just think the way that these two characters are written are so accurate. One of my friends, Neek, did a review of this book on her channel. I'll link it in my description. And she talked about how miscommunication is one of her least favorite tropes. I don't mind the miscommunication trope as much, but I do find it very frustrating when it's kind of like, just talk to each other. Like, your problem is so easily solved. What I loved about the two characters in this book is it's not so much, while they are miscommunicating, it's not so much some super simple thing that they could easily solve if they just opened their big traps about it. It's about their deep-seated, long-held insecurities about themselves and how that plays out in their relationship with each other. I'm gonna give a trigger warning to those. Just be prepared for the ending, because no one warned me about the ending, and it sent me into like an existential spiral for like 3 days after it. Not like trigger warning as in like anything bad happens, just be prepared for the ending, okay? Just just be prepared, please, because I wasn't prepared. And Sally Rooney, I just want to talk. I just want to talk, you know? So if you are someone who absolutely loves to read romance and you are looking to get into some more lit fic, I would absolutely recommend you start with Normal People by Sally Rooney. I think it's a really great intro to the genre. I think it's a good length. It's not too thick. I think the writing isn't too like pretentious and heavy duty, so it's not gonna like really baffle your brain. It's a really lighthearted, easy crash course intro to the lit fic romance genre. The next genre I want to talk about is mystery. So I guess you could like, sometimes I find it difficult to break apart. You've got like mystery and crime and thriller, and all three of those genres are like very much intertwined. I'm going to be talking about mystery just on its own, and then I'm going to be talking about crime thriller a bit further down. But my recommendation for your mystery intro to lit fic would be If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is a book that I read quite recently and I devoured it. I could not put this down. So in If We Were Villains, we follow 7 students who are all in their final year at a very prestigious arts college. So essentially it's a very pretentious college. It's not your everyday college. Like if Harvard is the place to go for law, the school that I've now forgotten the name of, that I should know, but I've forgotten the name of, the school in this book is like the Harvard of Shakespeare. So we follow 7 students who are, as I said, are all in their final year, and they're all quite good friends, and they are embarking on the beginning of like their major work for that year. So they're working on this final play, and then one of them tragically turns up murdered, and the other 6 make the decision to basically cover it up and not mention that they think he's been murdered. What I found really interesting and what made the mystery of this book so intriguing was the fact that this book is split into 2 different perspectives. So you have the perspective of the main character Oliver when he's actually at university and the events of the book are happening, and then you also have him 12 years, I want to say, in the future when he's just been released from prison for the murder of the character, except you the reader know he didn't do it. So you the reader know something is up, and then you follow Oliver back in past tense as he recounts the story to a detective in present tense to actually discover what happened. What I loved about this book is it has like what's it called? A bait and switch at the end. So you sort of think you know what's happened, and then right at the end, like literally on the last page, you're like, oh, what? Where did that come from? This one, as a nerdy theatre kid, just really scratched an itch in my brain. I loved reading about a side of acting that you so rarely get portrayed in literature, and the highs and lows and joys of trying to portray characters. And I loved how, let's be so for real, wanky and pretentious a lot of the characters are. I loved how passionate about Shakespeare they are. I love reading about people who are like truly invested and passionate in a certain topic, and these kids are so obsessed with Shakespeare. I loved it so much. I also loved, this is kind of my first foray into what I would say would be like dark academia, and I think this is a great place to start. I guess if you're gonna, like, is dark academia its own genre? I don't know. I would call this lit fic because it definitely has traits of a mystery and traits of dark academia, but so much of the story is about the relationships between these characters and how intertwined and complicated and complex they are, and how they start to break down when this horrific thing happens in their group. So if you're wanting something that is gripping, is a roller coaster ride from start to finish, but is definitely more airing into the side of lit fic, I would highly recommend If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. The next genre I want to talk about is horror, and I actually have a couple I want to talk about in this genre because I really couldn't narrow down which ones I wanted to pick. The first one is one that I read very, very recently, and that is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. I would say this is not horror as in like jump scare Stephen King. This is horror as in body horror, so there's a lot of body horror in this, and it's kind of like folk horror. But this is about Margot and her mother Ruth, who live alone in a little cabin on the edge of the forest, and they collect what they call strays. So basically these are people who get lost or injured in the forest near their cottage and find them of a night time to seek help, and Margot and her mother murder and eat these strays. Now Margot in this book is 9, I think, 9 or 10. She's quite young. She's like just a kid. She She knows better, but she doesn't know better. This is just the way she's always been raised. But then one day a woman called Eden stumbles into their cottage and kind of upends their way of life and really changes the dynamic between Margot and her mother. This is full on. If you don't like body horror, this is not the book for you. The descriptions of how the bodies are dissected and eaten are very graphic, and the ending is quite horrifying in its own way. What I thought was really interesting is this book explores the relationship between a mother and a daughter in a way that I have never really seen been done. I think it was a very, very new, fresh take on motherhood that I personally haven't read in a lot of books, and how motherhood isn't always the happy, happy, joy, joy thing that you think it's going to be, and how not everyone is supposed to be a mother. This is a new book. I'm pretty sure this one came out this year, The Lamb by Lucy Rose. I feel like this is Lucy Rose's debut novel. I think this might be her debut novel, which again, the amount of authors I have read where their debut novels are just, oh, mwah, chef's kiss, and this is no exception. This book is horrifying and heartbreaking. It's beautifully written. The way that the land around these two characters and the house itself is almost like its own character that grows and evolves with the story alongside the characters is just absolutely beautiful. I can't recommend this one enough. I'm so excited to get to discuss this one with my book club. We're actually meeting, by the time this video comes out, we will be meeting in a couple of days. So I'm very excited to see what their opinion on this one was, because I absolutely loved this. I adore like a cozy folk horror novel, and this one definitely hits the mark. The next book I want to talk about is Tender is the Flesh, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this author's name right, Augustina Bazaraca. So this is a translated novel. Oh my goodness, this, I'm going to be so straight up, this book is not going to be for everyone. This is another horror novel, and this is full on. There were moments in this book that I felt physically ill. So essentially the plot of this book is we follow our main character who works in the meat industry. Marcos is a meat wholesaler, except we are in a dystopian future where animals have contracted a disease that makes them both inedible but also highly, highly dangerous to humans. So essentially humanity has wiped out any and all animals. And because our main source of food, one of our main sources of food is now gone, factory farming turns from pigs and cows and sheep to humans. This is an absolutely insanely intense look at how the value of a life changes when you mix in consumerism and capitalism. This is just such a horrific look at factory farming practices, and has really had me questioning. I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian, but it's really had me questioning how I look at the food that I eat and where I source that from. Our story sort of kicks off when Marcos is gifted they call them female heads in the book, and he doesn't really know what to do with her, because it's the first time he sort of had to question whether these pieces of meat that they're farming are actually humans or not. I think it also does a really incredible job of dissecting what it is to be human, what makes us human, where the line between like human and not starts and when it finishes, aside from like the obvious biological factors. I mean, this is terrifying on a whole new level. This book kind of puts you in a bit of a chokehold and just kind of like full on choke grips you while you read this. It's so short, but fuck me, it packs a punch. Again, if The Lamb was like low-key body horror, this is full on. If you're someone who doesn't want to read about humans being eaten, this is not the book for you. But if you are someone who really has a stomach for it, I would highly, 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 highly recommend this one as your intro to horror in the lit fic genre. The next book I want to talk about, we're going to talk about crime/thriller as a genre. And the book that I would recommend for this one would be Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang. Now, I think at a face value, this doesn't seem like a crime/thriller book. It seems like a sort of fairly standard, just lit fic book. But I think when you really get into the meat of this book, what makes this so compelling is the mystery and the thrill behind it. So essentially, we meet our main character, June, who is a white woman. She is an author who is friends with a much more successful Asian author called Athena. One night when they are meeting up, Athena tragically chokes on a piece of pancake and, whilst in June's presence, dies. June then makes the incredibly questionable decision to steal Athena's unfinished, unseen manuscript and publish it under her own name, and then reaps the benefits of becoming a suddenly overnight success lauded author. However, once we get into this book, someone knows June's secret and is basically taunting and tormenting her to give it up, but June kind of like just digs her claws in and digs herself deeper and deeper into the hole. The sense of dread that fills you when you are reading this, because like I felt at least the penultimate scene at the end of the book is kind of obvious. Like the book kind of makes it obvious that June is gonna get caught. June is gonna get found out, and so you as the reader are just held in this chokehold of dread, wondering who it's going to be that topples June off her pedestal. It also says so much about white privilege in publishing specifically, which I think is a big topic of conversation at the moment on TikTok, and the privilege that comes with being a certain skin color when you're trying to get your work published. Rebecca F. Kuang is one of those authors who has tried so many different genres like within the litfic world and has done such a successful job of all of them. I think Yellowface is no different. This book is compelling and fun, and it's a roller coaster ride, and it will make you hate the main character so much. I think another thing that Rebecca F. Kuang has done really successfully is the fact that whilst June, the white character, is an incredibly unlikable person, so is Athena. Athena is not painted out to be this holy saint person. Like, she's actually painted to be quite a selfish, pretentious, imperfect person. But I think that's what the book is saying. The book is saying that people, people of color shouldn't have to be perfect. People of color shouldn't have to be held to higher standards than white people simply because they're not white. Athena did not deserve to have her life's work stolen and published under someone else's name simply because she's not a good person. And I think Rebecca F. Kuang has done such a fantastic job of conveying that in this book. I think it's also a really interesting take. I'm someone, obviously, as a reader who finds the publishing industry, while I don't really necessarily have any dreams of grandeur when it comes to being an author, I find the machine of the publishing industry very, very interesting. And I think this is a really cool insider take, because obviously R.F. Kuang has fantastic insights as a woman of color who is an author and knows so much about the publishing industry. I think there were some really cool insights and takes into the publishing industry that I found so fun and so interesting to read. So if you are someone who likes crime and a bit of mystery and like a bit of a thrill, and you're looking to get into litfic, I would very, very, very much recommend Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang. For our next genre, which is going to be, I'm kind of going to mash together science fiction and fantasy, and I understand those two are very different things, but I don't read a lot of science fiction, so just go with me here. For this one, my recommendation for this genre is going to be Blob by Maggie Su. Now, I know it says a love story, but hear me out. I would say this is science fiction because this is about a woman who finds a blob, a literal blob, outside a nightclub and grows it into a sentient man. That sounds like science fiction to me. So this is about our main character Vi, who is kind of a mess. She's girl failure, she's not doing well, it's woman versus the void, and she stumbles out of a nightclub one night and comes across this weird blob-like thing in an alleyway and decides to take it home because she just feels drawn to this blob for some reason. She quickly discovers that this blob is not like any other blob, and it's actually a man that she can grow into her perfect husband for herself. This is Maggie Su's debut, which again, I don't understand how these authors are just pumping out such fantastic pieces of literature as their first freaking book. Like, what the actual heck? This is such an interesting exploration of identity and love and desire and kind of like the messy period of your life where you're a young adult figuring out who you are as a person. Vi is really a mess and she really doesn't have a lot going for her in life, and she's pushing people away and trying to find herself and wholeness in all the wrong places. So even though this is definitely less on the science fiction-y side. I think this is science fiction because it's a blob. It's a blob that turns into a man. That's science fiction to me. The amount of ways that Vi self-sabotages her own life is quite tragic, and I think a lot of us will see ourselves mirrored in the character where you know that the actions you're taking aren't necessarily the best or healthiest for yourself, but you just can't help yourself. Sometimes, what's happening with that hair? Sometimes we just need to be messy boots and make bad decisions, and Vi really is the perfect embodiment of that energy. The other book that I'm going to recommend for the sci-fi / fantasy litfic genre is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, and this is another new one. This is about our main character, Lenore, who we're in like the 1800s England, and she has married a wealthy aristocratic man, and they are traveling out to their summer house so Lenore can kind of like get the ultimate feather in her cap of being the sophisticated London housewife, and that is to build a beautiful summer house and host her husband's hunting party. On the way out to the summer house, they come across a carriage that's had an accident, and they find a woman who is totally alone and take her back to their house to take care of her. This is when we meet the character Camilla, who we find out pretty quickly is not your average woman. This book is so freaking beautiful. It's about lust and love and self-discovery and sexual agency, all wrapped up in the delicious bread roll of sapphic vampires. What more could you possibly ask for? If you are someone who loves vampires, if you are someone who loves yearning and just goodness, Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. I really struggled to put this book down. It's not a particularly big book, so you can kind of fly through this one, and it is very gripping. It definitely has more of like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like plot progression than a lot of the books in the litfic genre do, which I guess a lot of people will appreciate if you're someone who's a little bit more plot driven than vibe driven. This is an excellent one for you to start with, because I do think this is generally more plot driven than it is character driven, but at the same time the characterization of the main character that you get is just so beautiful and chef's kiss, and I just have only beautiful, wonderful things to say about this book, Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. The last book I'm going to be recommending, and this is in our genre of dystopian fiction, and that is The Memory Police by Yoko Agawa. This is a Japanese book which is set on an island where things disappear, literally, emotionally, mentally. Basically, this island over the course of several years has slowly had things disappear, where essentially the inhabitants of the island will just wake up and all memories of those things have been wiped, and they just cease to mean anything to them. Our main character is a young novelist who discovers that her editor has the ability to remember. So where everyone else on the island will forget what a hat is, her editor has the ability to remember, and is being hunted down by this faction of the police called the Memory Police, whose job is to basically collect anything that's been forgotten and make sure anyone that is remembering is taken care of. This is a really wonderful book about censorship and pulls a lot of inspiration from George Orwell's 1984. It basically delves into what it is to be controlled by a government and who gets to decide what we are and aren't allowed to do. But the writing is just so beautiful, and the way that the author describes the grief that the character often feels when something is forgotten. How do you grieve something that you don't remember? This is just such a beautiful book, and it is something that will stay with you for a really long time after you finish it, and I highly recommend this one. This is sometimes when I really like something, I really struggle to like articulate what I like about it. I'm just like, it's good, read it. There are so many books in this genre that I could talk about. I could literally make a 7-part series, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll make a series about, like, I'll pick a genre and just do recommendations from that genre. Is that something that you guys would want? I don't know. Like this video if you want that. If you want an ongoing series of litfic recommendations in specific genres, and I can certainly do that, because I had a hard time picking like just one for a lot of those genres. I mean, some of them I didn't pick just one. So I could yap on and on and on and on and on. And in fact, I will. But I hope you liked this video. I hope you're all having a great week. I'm sorry that last week there was no video. We are, you know, we are in the trenches of depression right now. And that's fine. And sometimes when you're in the trench, you got to choose where you're just going to like lay down and die, or if you're going to try and claw your way out. And last week was a lay down and die week. And this week is a claw our way out week. So we're going through it, but I feel like I've got a nice little community on the internet that I can come and talk to. So yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know how your week has been going. Let me know your recommendations for new books I should be reading. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe. Don't leave a mean comment or I will cry, and I will see you next week. Bye.